this down because I'd spoken after Andrew and Dan before. I learned that lesson the hard way. I didn't want to speak after them again. So. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this tribute. It is really quite an honor. And I can't help but to think that it's slightly ironic as well, because when I served with Ken in the Senate, he was the majority leader, he would spend half his time on the floor trying to discourage people from going to the microphone to speak. He liked to have a very comprehensive and succinct debate. And after he thought all of the important points had been made on the debate, he'd pull you aside as you're coming down and he'd say, "So what are you going to say?" And, well, I thought I'd make this point. Well, that point's already been made. Well, what else are you going to say? Well, nothing. Okay, you can sit down now. This is kind of how it ran. It made for good fun, I guess, on the Senate floor. A lot of people have told a lot of stories. I figured I'd tell a couple as well about Ken. There's just so many. We could sit here all day, literally, and swap stories. Several people met him for the first time when they first decided to run for office. I heard that Representative Penniston, you had a story very similar to mine. I was running for the state senate in 2004, and the closer we got to the election, the more it looked like I might actually win. And somebody finally recommended, why don't you go down to the Capitol and talk to some of the state senators down there and try to get their support. So sure enough, I came down to the state capitol and I visited with Ken. I remember sitting in his office. He was the minority leader at the time, so he was sharing an office with Joan Fitzgerald. It was pretty crowded in there. I sat at the corner of his desk, and I think exactly the same thing. I think he was eating his lunch while we were having a conversation. And he looked at me and he said, "So tell me about yourself." All right? And I wanted to impress him. So I gave him my whole resume. I went through the whole thing. I used to sometimes an anecdote when I introduced myself to an audience. I'd say, well, look, third generation Coloradan, and went off to Stanford on an ROTC scholarship, and made 2 deployments on active duty when I was in the Navy to the Persian Gulf. I came back, went to law school, and I practiced law here in Denver. And he kind of chewed on his sandwich, and he did this with his whiskers. And he looked at me and said, "Are you a felon?" And I kind of was thrown back by that. I said, "Well, no, sir, I'm not." He said, "Good, you're qualified." And I think that's when I realized that the bar to entry sometimes down here isn't really. After getting to know Ken a little bit better, though, I realized there was actually a better answer to that question. I should have looked him right in the eye and said, "Not convicted." And he would have really appreciated that. Shortly after that, we took the majority that year, so he became the majority leader in the Senate. And when he became the majority leader, majority leader of the Senate assigns all the committees. So he came to me and said, "So Brandon, what committees do you want to be on?" And I was very naive. I don't think I'd ever actually sat in a committee. I didn't know what committees were on the list. I knew I needed to knock on a bunch of doors and talk to a bunch of people, and that's how I was going to get elected. I hadn't really thought much about what I'd do once I actually took office. And I kind of fell back on what I was good at in my stump speech, because I talked a lot about public education. My wife is a public school teacher. I have young kids. And so I said, I want to be on the education committee. It's the only thing that matters to me. It's the only committee that I want to be on. I said, all right. Well, the next day I get my committee assignments, and I was on the finance committee, I was on the health and human services committee, and I was on the judiciary committee. And he came to me and he said, you need to learn something. And by giving you the breadth of experience, and not just giving you something that you feel comfortable with, I think you'll be a better legislator in the long run. So it'll give you a more diverse experience down there. And he was absolutely right. Having the opportunity to learn something about all these areas that I'd never been exposed to before was very helpful. A couple of years later, I was the assistant majority leader. He was still the majority leader. And we were officed over there in the office suite. I was right across the hall from him with my office. And it was late in the afternoon, and I was kind of just finishing up at my desk, getting ready to go home. And he steps into my office, and he says, Brandon, I got to ask you to do me a favor. Can you just entertain my request for a minute? Well, of course we can. What can I do? Anything for you. I said, well, don't be so short. Need a favor from me. I said, okay. Well, what is it? He says, well, my girlfriend wants me to carry a bill. That's what he said. He said, my girlfriend wants me to carry a bill. And I said, okay. He says, well, I feel like I have a conflict of interest. I don't think I should be carrying a bill for my girlfriend. I think, it's an important issue and somebody should do it, but I don't know that it should be me. Maybe you would be inclined to sit down with her and see if it's something you're interested in. Well, what's it about? Well, it was autism, and it was helping kids who have autism. I said, Ken, absolutely, I'd be happy to do it. From that one conversation, I think we carried 4 pieces of legislation together over a 3-year period, and we passed a lot of very important things with, of course, Ken moving things right along behind the scenes. But Betty, thank you very much for all of your work. Thank you for supporting Ken and everything you've done for the autism community here in Colorado. Last story, and then I'll turn it over to the pros. A lot has been said about Ken's ethics, Ken's ability to live the life that a lot of us aspire to live. But there's nothing that spoke to me more than a committee hearing that I sat in with him. I think it was my 2nd year in the legislature. He was running it as a chairman. It was a judiciary committee. Dan and I had an opportunity to serve the judiciary. I think it was right after he had stepped out. And Ken was running the committee. And a controversial bill came up before the committee. And I think what it dealt with was sealing records, felony records. So if you had a Class 5 or Class 6 felony on your record, after 10 years of being perfectly compliant with the law, it would allow you to seal the record so employers, when you went to try to get a job, couldn't see this blemish on your record. And the point being, a lot of these people, ever since they got a shoplifting conviction, convicted of theft for shoplifting, something of that sort, would have this blemish on their record for the rest of their lives. Every time they went to try to get a job, they just couldn't, because somebody would see that in their history. So we're debating whether or not we give them the ability to seal their records. And as you can imagine, it became kind of a partisan issue, and it was a controversial bill. Well, a woman came to the table in the Senate committee room, and she was very well dressed and presented well. But you could see how nervous she was. She had a piece of paper in her hand with her testimony. The paper was shaking kind of like this because she was so nervous. And you could see the perspiration start to gather on her brow and that sort of thing. And Ken said, stop. He said, stop. Ma'am, please understand, this is your room. The people around this table, they're your employees. They work for you, right? This building belongs to you. We're the ones who should be nervous, not you. That one conversation, so important. See somebody of his stature, everybody looks up to him, to just stop the whole proceeding and demonstrate that he gets it in the big sense, what our democracy is supposed to be about, representative government. So, thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for honoring Ken.